What is up, Packers fans? Happy Wednesday. Welcome into an all-new episode of the Pack-A-Day Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can follow the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. As always, thank you so much for being here and making Pack-A-Day part of your daily routine. Today, we're going to be going over our grades from Packers Vikings. Some really interesting ones, and we'll delve into all of it in just a moment. Before we get there, shout out to our brand new Pack-A-Day Podcast YouTube members, Bryson Doris, Christopher, Troy Peters, Jerron Witt, and Ilarian. Thank you guys so much for signing up. Make sure to check those out if you have not already. Early access to content. We've got, exclusive members only Q&As, an Aaron Nagler preview video every single week. There's a ton of stuff out there. Of course, a ton of stuff from Ross Uglum as well. So make sure to check those out. And then, of course, we've got our Luigi's Pizza Performer of the Week from Packers Vikings, and that is no other than Jayden Reed. Jayden Reed continues to be an absolute star. And I know I talked about him quite a bit with Paul Brettel on today's episode, but it just deserves to be talked about and showed exactly how impressive he is right now and what he is bringing to this offense. As Paul mentioned in our episode earlier today, just the ability for him to be able to be moved all around and defense have to account for him. But in this game in particular, man, we saw it on the first touchdown play, right? His ability to separate at the end of that play, go up, catch the ball, get a touchdown, and then just get everyone fired up. That's the sort of personality that he has. You need some of those guys on your team, and Jayden Reed is one of those dudes. And then he's got a play over the middle of the field where he completely contorts his body and catches a ball that's a bit behind him. We talked about on the day how some of the receivers did not do a good enough job of maybe bailing out Jordan a little bit and making some of those contested catches or those difficult catches. Not Jayden Reed. He continued to make those plays. And then we're also talking about a play where Jordan rolls out and has a very Jordan-esque play and heaves it down the field, gives his receiver a chance. Who goes up and gets it for him? Jayden Reed. Like, just play after play after play. And we have seen this now through 4 weeks, even with a backup quarterback. You can run the ball with him. You can pass it to him. And he can win in all different ways, outside, inside. He can win down the field, intermediate, behind the line of scrimmage, handing it off to him, gadget guy, non-gadget guy, whatever you need, Jayden Reed can give you. And it is so rare to have a player, 5'11", 187, somewhere in that range, that can be that full gadget guy, give you everything that you want from there, but also just go out and dominate at wide receiver as well. He has been unbelievable and certainly deserving of our weekly Luigi's Pizza Performer of the Week. And again, deservedly so for Jayden Reed this week. All right, let's get to a quick practice update from Wednesday. I am recording this prior to Matt LaFleur speaking to the media. So I'm just going off of what the beat reporters had reported from Wednesday's practice. So in the rehab group included Jair Alexander, Christian Watson, Elton Jenkins, Devontae Wyatt, and Luke Musgrave. So those 5 were in the rehab group. A player who warmed up but stayed inside and did not go out with the team to practice was Kenny Clark. And then 2 players returned from practice, Carrington Valentine and Jordan Morgan. So great to see that Valentine and Morgan were practicing. Not great to see that Kenny Clark did not go out with the team and stayed inside. And I don't think Jair is super shocking that he was in the rehab group. Same with Christian Watson. We knew that would happen, and we pretty much assumed it with Devontae Wyatt as well. We'll have to sort of see through the course of the week where Elton Jenkins and Luke Musgrave are and if there's any risk to their playing status. Meanwhile, a great sign that Jordan went out with the team, was not with the rehab group. They didn't shut him down for a day or anything like that. He continues to practice, which is a very good sign. I would expect when Matt LaFleur talks that he will be limited. No surprise there. All right, let's get to our week 4 grades. We'll go through offense, top and bottom, and then some noteworthy performers. Then we'll get to the defensive side of the ball, top 3, bottom 3, and noteworthy performers. And then we'll kind of wrap it up from there. Starting on the offensive side of the ball, our top 3 performers, I just talked about number 1, Jayden Reed, plus 1.35 grade, his 4th consecutive week grading well into the positive. And I didn't even mention, by the way, the fact that he continues to block really well on the outside. So not only is he doing the running stuff, not only is he doing all the receiving stuff, not only is he doing the run after the catch stuff, but he is also blocking down the field for his teammates as well. As complete of a 5'11", 185 receiver as I can imagine. I know there's like the Steve Smiths of the world and things like that, but you're talking about a very, very select few of players that at that size can go again and do absolutely everything. And Jayden Reed is in that category. My second highest graded player for the 2nd consecutive week on the top 3 on offense, Sean Rhyan, plus 1.2. I loved the way that Sean Rhyan played in this game. First of all, we're starting to see consistency from Sean Ryan. And maybe it's coincidence, or maybe it's because he's actually getting to play the full game and isn't rotating with Jordan Morgan or previously John Runyon Jr. going back to a year ago, and he's getting the opportunity to make this position his own. But he is in real time coming into his own and making this right guard position his position. And it is really fun to watch. Next is, I love his mentality. Like, he's throwing some guys around out there. He can bring it as a run blocker. I think he has a little bit more physicality in the run game than maybe some of the other offensive linemen do. And I think he really helps this team in a variety of different ways. I thought he was really astute on his blitz pickups and twists and stunts. Overall, I've been pretty astounded these past 2 weeks from what we saw out of Sean Ryan. It's interesting. You go back to college and his grade and evaluation coming out of college. The name that I brought up during that time was Josh Sitton. I thought there was a good chunk of Josh Sitton to Sean Ryan's game in college, even going back to like playing some tackle, playing some guard. And I really liked this. I thought as a third round pick, he was going to be a potential steal at that spot. Came in his rookie year, out of shape, was not ready to play at all, looked fairly brutal, and then got suspended in the second half of that year, his rookie year. And you're not only thinking like this is a bust, but you're thinking like, I don't know that this guy is guaranteed to make it in his second season. Then he comes back his second season, is far more motivated. There's still some signs of like, hey, maybe he didn't come into camp in the best shape. He ends up getting into the rotation with John Runyon Jr. towards the end of the year. There were some positive signs, but even by the end of the year, I just felt like John Runyon Jr. was outplaying him to an extent. I kind of felt like they probably should have just gone with JRJ, but for whatever reason, they didn't. I understand it. Now those extra reps seemingly very much helped Sean Ryan, so that's a great sign. And then you get into year 3. And it kind of looked like coming into the offseason and the training camp that Jordan Morgan was just going to win the right guard job. And then they start the season. Ryan is the starter, mostly due to the fact that Morgan got hurt before the start of the season. But Jordan Morgan's rotating in, and then Morgan goes down, and Ryan finally gets his opportunity. And man, has he made the most of it these past 2 weeks. Really, really like what I've seen out of him. Is it perfect yet? No. Can he still work on his hand placement? Absolutely. Can he work on, all aspects of his game? Yes. But he looks like a legitimately good starting right guard right now, a legitimately good starting offensive lineman. And that is a big win for Green Bay. Like, these 5 guys look like 5 legitimate starters, and they are playing well. We'll talk more about basically every single one of these guys along the line. But Sean Ryan, second consecutive week grading in the top 3. And then Elton Jenkins, man, he just been awesome. And hopefully his, not going out and being in the rehab group is more of just some vet rest and some things like that. But he's been outstanding. He's been more physical. He's been really good in the run game. His attention to detail has been awesome. I've been saying it and I'll continue to say it. This is the best I have seen Elton Jenkins play. I'm like just at a loss for words at how he has completely just turned it on this year. And that's not to say, again, he's ever been bad or, anything like that. He's always been good, but this is another level for Jenkins. And he has been, in my opinion, I know there's a lot of praise for Zach Tom, deservedly so, but Elton Jenkins to me has been the ace of this offensive line so far. Another really great week. He is not getting beat in pass pro. He's super smart out there. And I know helping that offensive line as they're starting to, kind of figure out some of these blitzes throughout the course of the game with Minnesota, but just another fantastic game from Elton Jenkins. My bottom 3 weren't a ton here on offense. I thought Romeo Doubs had a tough game. He could just knock it off of coverage. He got kind of mauled a couple times, and there's actually on the interception, the one where Musgrave was going up the seam, and then they throw the pick to Watson. Doubs on his route basically just gets completely thrown legally out of bounds and couldn't get off the press coverage on that play. A few other plays where he couldn't come up with the ability to get open, and then just kind of failed to make any big not spectacular, but like any sort of game changing plays or anything that maybe would have made up for that. Had a couple catches over the middles. I want to say there was one that he could have had, but either whether it was a drop or just one that he didn't come up with that he probably could have had. If I remember correctly, there was one of those as well, but just not the day that you normally come to expect, the consistent day that you come to expect from Romeo Doubs. So nothing brutal here, but I thought it could have been a lot better day from Romeo. Then the two other ones, Emmanuel Wilson, negative 0.15. Now, if you'd like to disagree with me on, well, you can disagree with me on any of them, by the way, but PFF did like Emmanuel Wilson in this one more than I did. Thought there were a couple blitz pickups that Wilson could have done better on. There were a couple blitz pickups he did really well on as well, so I want to point that out. And then there were a couple run lanes where I didn't think he saw the lane really well. Thought maybe his vision could have been a little bit better. Again, negative 0.15 is basically a neutral grade, so I'm not saying Emmanuel Wilson had this brutal game, but he was my second lowest graded player on offense, which is a good sign. If your second lowest is negative 0.15, that is always a very, very good sign. And then the other one was Christian Watson, negative 0.05. Just one play really where he didn't get off of coverage, and that was it. And then he got injured early in the game. So nothing bad here from Christian whatsoever. Nothing we even need to delve into. Certainly did nothing wrong on the play where he got injured or, couldn't come up with the ball there. But yeah, so it just was, he had one small, very, very small negative and then just didn't have the opportunity to make up for it because he went out injured in the game. Noteworthy ones, some players I know people are very intrigued by. Jordan Love ended with a plus 0.55 grade in this game. He did end up in the positive. Now, I know you may look at some of the tape and say he threw 3 picks. He was inaccurate throughout the course of the day, didn't play his normal brand of football. How did he grade in the positive? Well, he also threw for 380 yards and 4 touchdowns in this game. And if you look at sort of the ledger of everything and you weigh out the positives and the negatives, I had more positives from him than I did negatives. And it just kind of comes down to that. Now, the play that he made to Wicks at the end of the game with basically the game on the line, needing to score on that drive and throwing one up, that was brutal. That was a very, very negative play from Jordan. I think a lot of the other stuff, there was some explanation that you could give. Now, a lot of his inaccuracies, not all, but some, were within a catchable radius. Now, it was still a negative grade, but not a brutal or egregious negative grade. Not one that's going to completely tank you like he completely missed the receiver, things like that. Now, he put them in a difficult position, but he gave the receivers opportunities to catch the ball. So it's still graded in the negative, but it could have been a lot worse if he missed them completely. And a lot of the times he did not. There was a play that was completely behind a receiver. I want to say it was Wicks, and Wicks had to go behind him. And it looks like in real time, all right, that's a brutal throw. But he's actually protecting Dontavian Wicks on that throw to make sure he doesn't get drilled by the safety over the middle. We talked about the first interception, but I'll go through it one more time. This is a staple play. You get a dagger on the in route, to Christian Watson. They are running the Musgrave up the seam against cover 2. This is the exact look that they want. The linebacker is going to have to go with Watson up the seam and with Musgrave up the seam and cover 2. The shallow defender goes with the tight end, Tucker Kraft, and takes him shallow. And then right behind them in that vacated zone where the linebacker is leaving, you end up with a wide open Christian Watson. Love takes that step back, plants his foot, fires to Watson. And right as he plants his foot and Love gets ready to fire, the linebacker comes off of Luke Musgrave. It's completely unexpected, and jumps that route and makes it a contested catch situation. And somehow, you have Isaiah McDuffie dropping the wide open interception on one side of the ball. And this play, Grugier Hill completely jumps it, makes a crazy collision, and still ends up with the ball. A great play by the defense. Like that, they were very clearly prepared for that play, and it was an awesome play by the defense. Sometimes the defense gets paid too, and you have to tip your cap. I mean, it just comes down to that. And that's how I would grade that play. Still a bit of a negative for Jordan, but I understand, how I always want to view this is, can I put my mind in what they were seeing and understand why they made that play? And based on what the defensive look was, and based on Christian Watson coming open and them having a ton of success on that exact route, and when he threw that ball where the linebacker was, would I have probably done the exact same thing? Absolutely. Not to say that I'm the be all end all here or anything. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying I'm a pro quarterback, but I can 1,000,000% see exactly what he was seeing. And Matt LaFleur echoed this almost exact same thing in his press conference the other day, that the linebacker made a great play and literally said, sometimes that's the cost of doing business, is the other team makes a play on a ball. And that to me is what that was. The second pick, Matt LaFleur detailed and said that Romeo Doubs got widened out too far in his route. And by the time he came across, he's supposed to be outside of that window where Musgrave is standing. And instead, because he got too wide on it, he ends up right behind Musgrave. To further the issue, you end up with a free blitzer, which Matt also said should not have happened on that play, that there never should have been a free blitzer there. I think that one's on Jacobs. And he mentioned on Sunday where Jacobs didn't play maybe as much because some early blitz protection issues. This was the first one that I noted where I'm like, that probably was on Jacobs. And he looks inside at the linebacker and was like, should I go block him? And then just goes out in his route. I'm assuming he was probably supposed to go block them. I don't know that for sure. So, not grading Jacobs in the negative on that one because I don't know 1,000,000% for sure, but probably was meant to go inside. And that blitz is probably supposed to be picked up, which would have given Jordan the extra tick to get that to Romeo in the open window. But he's got a free rusher at him. He knows he's not going to be able to escape it. He throws what would be a perfect ball to Romeo Doubs for a not big time completion, but a good completion. And it just so happens that because Romeo had the wrong route, because he gets blitzed and doesn't have the ability to wait that extra tick, he has to get rid of the ball. And Musgrave's right in that window. And Musgrave, to his defense, doesn't know that Doubs could be behind. Doubs is never supposed to be behind him on that throw. Doubs is supposed to be a full window over. And because Doubs ran the wrong route or didn't run the route correctly, Doubs is right behind him. But Musgrave has no way of knowing that. That's not how the play is supposed to be run. So he only can assume that that ball is going to him. And to be fair, Jordan had been a little bit inaccurate on the day. So it's fair to understand of him not thinking, oh, is Romeo, I better go get that ball. So that's what he tries to do. He tips it, Romeo tips it, and then it ends up and obviously this is another one why Romeo was in the negative 0.5 grade, by the way, but it ends up in an interception. So that one, not quite as egregious either. And then again, the Dontavian Wicks one was brutal and certainly a huge negative grade on that play. There were a couple other ones where I thought he maybe put a little bit in harm's way or maybe didn't make the right read, could have gone underneath a little bit more. The potential touchdown throw to Dontavian Wicks where it bounces right off of Wicks's chest. That play was a late throw and an underthrown ball by Jordan. Still should have probably been caught for a touchdown, right? So, weigh out how you want to grade that one. But I thought overall there were a lot of really big plays that Jordan made in this one. Some of it certainly a little bit too much too late. But in the end, the ledger leaned a little bit positive. Not a ton, but a little bit positive for Jordan on the day. What other one do we want to talk about? Josh Jacobs, plus 0.8 grade. He was really, really good. Basically, every time he touched the ball, good things happened. As I mentioned, did have a couple issues and snafus in pass pro, but overall, really great day from him. Dontavian Wicks, a lot of potential catches that did not end up in catches. The potential touchdown that he dropped was a huge negative, but he also came up with a ton of separation in this game. His routes were awesome, and he came up with a couple touchdowns as well. Was he the 2-point conversion? I can't remember if he was the 2-point conversion or not, but either way, Wicks was a big time player late in the game and came up with some really big catches. So his negatives counteracted the positives, his positives counteracted the negatives, and he ends up with a totally neutral grade in this one. But a missed opportunity where if he converts the plays that he had the ability to convert, this is probably like a plus 2.0 grade maybe for Wicks in this one, if he can just come up with some of those catches and make some of those plays. So a neutral grade, but a lot of missed opportunity out there for Wicks. Tucker Kraft, 0.25, some really good blocking. The run after the catch, beautiful for the touchdown, but a huge fumble on the day. And then speaking of the rest of the offensive line, we already talked about Sean Ryan, plus 1.2, Elton Jenkins, plus 0.9. I had Rasheed Walker at plus 0.7, Josh Myers at plus 0.7, and Zach Tom at plus 0.65. So the entirety of the offensive line graded very well. Minnesota got a few over on some blitzes that they were able to take advantage of, where a guy just basically got home, not because they beat an offensive lineman. This Minnesota defense could not get off of blocks from these Packers offensive linemen all day long. They looked really, really good, and is a reason why I remain very optimistic about this Packers team. All right, from a defensive side of the ball, kind of swapped, like basically only one good player on the day for the most part, one really good player. That was Xavier McKinney, plus 1.10. I mentioned this a couple times this week, but I can make a strong argument if Xavier McKinney doesn't have any interceptions on the season, that he is still worth what they gave him so far. He's been awesome. He is playing a very safe brand of football when he needs to. He's in the right spot, the right time, constantly communicating. He is tackling extremely well, taking good angles. And then also he's coming up with 4 interceptions in 4 games, 1 per game so far. And I thought this interception was fantastic, read the play perfectly, went up and got a ball that was intended for Aaron Jones. He understood the play, clearly did some homework on the tape study, and knew exactly where that ball was going, and went up and made a big time play in this game. So he continues to play phenomenal football. Kenny Clark with a plus 0.15 grade. So nothing great for Kenny, but a grade in the positive, which I think we're maybe hoping for a little bit more going against this Garrett Bradbury matchup that he usually just kind of dominates, but still good to see Kenny in the positive. Thought he did really well in run defense. As we know, the pass rush on the whole did not do a great job on Sunday against Minnesota. And then Evan Williams with a plus 0.1 grade had a really good stop in the hole. I'll be totally transparent. I didn't quite know how to grade the play where it was a collision at the point of attack and they did not throw a flag. I think that probably gets flagged for pass interference more often than not. I left that as a neutral play. If you view like that was an awesome play by Williams, it should have been a positive then, I guess. If you view that it should have been PI, it maybe should have been a negative. I don't know. To me, how I viewed it, and this is why I also came to the conclusion of neutral, the receiver and the safety both see the ball, and they don't see each other. They're both going for the ball and they both collide basically head on. And to me, as a defender, you do have the right to go for the ball. And Evan Williams was going for the ball. Like he sees it, he's going for it. The receiver sees it, he's going for it. They don't see each other and they both collide. I can understand why that's not called because they both collided together. They're both going for the ball. By the letter of the law, that should probably be no PI. But I think it probably gets called far more often than not, right or wrong. I think that gets called more often than not. And I don't necessarily know that Williams made a great play on it because he doesn't really see the receiver, which I think would have been important there to understand. So to me, it ended up being neutral, but overall, some minimal snaps for Williams, but he ends up with a slight positive plus 0.1 grade. My bottom three, Eric Stokes, negative 0.95. I don't know what to do with Eric Stokes at this point. I think Justice and I probably covered it in great detail, but there's a certain brand of wide receiver that he can do well against, or at least solid against. And it's more of like the big, fast, physical wide receivers, or at least big, fast receivers that he can stick with. Anyone with nuance, with route running, with the ability to change direction, stop on a dime, he just can't stay with. And he's not the most intimidating corner as a run defender or just tackling guy either. So do I think he can play against certain teams, against certain matchups? Yeah, I do. I think he's an NFL corner. I don't think he's a starter. And this is about the worst possible matchup that you could have against, Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, who can change direction with ease and are great route runners. And that's Eric Stokes' kryptonite. So listen, and that's, by the way, that's not okay. Like, you have to be able to change directions. You have to be able to stick with your wide receivers, regardless of what type of wide receiver that they are. You can't just be like, well, I don't change directions well, so match me up with somebody. That's not how it works. I think there's a flaw in Stokes when it comes to coverage, and I think Minnesota exposed it. Like I said, this is about the worst possible matchup for him. I think there are receivers he can go against where he matches up much better. This was not one of those days, and it was a tough day for Eric Stokes. Rashawn Gary, negative 0.85. Couldn't get off a block of a tight end. Got in a stunt inside where he got one-on-one with a fullback. CJ Ham just pushed him to the side. Couldn't get pressure on Aaron Jones. Couldn't get pressure against Brian O'Neill all day long. Continues to want to be a speed rusher. Did make a couple good plays in run defense, at least one at the end on Aaron Jones. Not good enough. We talked about it all week. We don't need to go over it more here. Just not good enough from Rashawn Gary. He has to be an impact player. Not only has he not been an impact player, he's been a negative player on the season and really since week 13 of 2023. And then Keyshawn Nixon, negative 0.6. It's an interesting game from Keyshawn. Has the touchdown that he allows to Jefferson where he doesn't get his head turned. That's a tough one. Has the holding penalty in the end zone. That's not a great one. But then also has the blitz off the edge where he forces a fumble. It's a really big play, and he shoots out of a cannon. He shows his great speed. He does a great job of getting that ball out, but nobody blocks him, and the quarterback's completely turned to the other side. So that is a little bit more of a hat tip to Jeff Hafley for that call and getting him in that situation, but hat tip to Keyshawn Nixon for getting the ball out and showing off his great speed on that particular play. The negatives outweighed the positives, but I do want to mention again that forced fumble was a massive play in the game. Some other noteworthy performers, TJ Slayton, negative 0.5. I talked about him with Justice a little bit. I know Justice said he liked what Slayton did in this game. It was the tale of two halves, much like it was for the Packers. He was literally on the ground, I think 4 times in the first half. Honestly, 4 of his first 6 snaps in the game, just on the ground, out of his gap, like just could not hold up at all. And then as the game went on, he settled into it more and started to get a little pressure on the quarterback and hold up in the run game better. But it started really, really, really rough and got better as the day went along. Quay Walker plus 0.05. He was my fourth highest graded player on defense. Just missed being in that top three. Not that, again, a plus 0.1 is great and a plus 3, but still just missed being there. Did have the really big sack on the day. For the most part, was pretty neutral outside of that sack, but the sack was a really big one, and kudos to him for getting that play. Eric Wilson, negative 0.45, struggled in coverage and completely vacated his zone on a touchdown and goal line to, I believe it was Josh Oliver on that play. Corey Ballantyne, negative 0.5, a mostly decent / neutral day, save for the brutal double move early in the game where he gave up a touchdown. So yeah, that was the big negative. Outside of that, he was mostly okay. And actually, I think a little bit positive on the day. So those are the big ones. Top three again, Jaden on offense, Jaden Reed, Sean Ryan, and Elton Jenkins. Bottom three on offense, Romeo Doubs, Emmanuel Wilson, and Christian Watson. Top three on defense, Xavier McKinney, Kenny Clark, and Evan Williams. Bottom three, Eric Stokes, Rashawn Gary, and Keyshawn Nixon. Full grades are up over on PackerReport.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, give those 5-star reviews, and of course, check out those Pack a Day Podcast YouTube memberships. Shout out to our Hall of Fame and All-Pro members, Most Hated Minnesotan, PJ Wayne, John Wild, Jay Brodad, Brandon Paletta, Jennifer Wright, Boom Handle, Donna Lee, Lori Lord, Baby QB, David McCluskey, Donald Decker, Dan Miller, Alex Wong, Arnaldo Espinoza, Peter Ritaka, SoCal Pack, Dan Guessford, Love and Football, Jay Zimmerman, B Brown, and Jay Foreman. I'll see you guys tomorrow, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.